read the have you had any experience with the Course in Miracles, Janet?
Yes, I have, and I had a book about 1990, and I actually threw it out. So I just can't, and I still struggle with it. But then my daughter sent me this. Can you read that? Living with Miracles. It's
And
very helpful. That
who's
is
it?
B. Patrick Miller.
Okay. Okay, cool.
But really,
Cool.
I'm no expert. I'm a little student.
And
Well,
it's
the
hard to
Course
read
in
on your
Miracles,
own. It's so
yeah,
hard
it
to
is.
read on your own. Yeah.
Thank
It
you.
really
I'm
is.
delighted to be here because I've looked for a Course of Miracles class for many years, but not terribly seriously until Jane said, boom, here. Yeah, no, and I have been in groups, live groups, years ago, and it's just the language is tricky for me. It's
Well, it can be. It's oftentimes the nomenclature in the Course in Miracles, the words mean something different than what traditional Christianity would state. And oftentimes people will get triggered by the language because they've been wounded by traditional Christianity. But the Course is very, very different as far as the meaning behind some of the language that's being used. I was teaching the Course in Miracles back in the mid 80s. And we were teaching it for during the AIDS crisis, where you were diagnosed and you were a skeleton in 3 months, and a group of us came together to create a spiritual support for those people dying of AIDS. And Bill Thetford, the man who organized all the paperwork that Helen had written, all the channeled work, Bill Thetford was her boss. They both worked in the psychiatric area of a hospital, and he was the manager of that particular branch of the hospital. And so Bill was this amazing guy, and he would come and sit in on our Course in Miracles groups because he was just that kind of guy. And he would just go to the back of the room and sit on the floor, and we would just go through the course, much like we're doing tonight, where we'd pass the book around and each person would read a paragraph. And then when someone in the circle, and we'd have 50 to 75 people there, and when someone in the circle didn't understand a piece of it, one of us would attempt to give our take on what we believe the Course was saying. So it's very similar to today. The reason we teach it this way is because we really deeply desire for there not to be one authority that kind of says, oh, this is what the Course means. It's very interpretative and very much about where we individually are in our journey with the Course in Miracles. Because I personally think that your realization of it has everything to do with our own internal evolution. And since we've been doing it this way, I have understood the Course way better than I've ever understood it before. So I really appreciate, everyone that comes onto the call. We all have something to add to it. If someone has a question, we all try to do our best to try to give our take on it. V is the nomenclature wizard who will say, what does atonement mean again? And she'll have it all written out. So we're able to kind of piece together a lot of the paragraphs in the Course in Miracles and come to a consensus, at least to the best of our ability, as none of us are experts at this. The bottom line for me is that the Course always distills itself down to, and I think says the same thing over and over and over again with different language choices and with different slants, because it is appealing to the variety of different perspectives and different egos that are reading it. And it fundamentally, in my mind, to the best of my ability at this point in time, is that this one word, the atonement, or looking through the eyes of the Holy Spirit, which is when we stop judging each other and we start seeing just the light of God in each person, that is like a gift back to ourselves. It's almost like when we extend a blessing, we're blessed. When we extend a curse, we're cursed. When we extend a judgment, we fear attack. So it's pretty simplistic that if we're going to create what our own individual heaven on earth, we're going to do it walking hand in hand down the road of our life with our brothers and sisters, which simply means we're going to do it by stopping the judgment and condemnation of others. Our fear lessens when we do that. Our love increases. Our joy becomes more experienceable. That's not even a word, but I think you get the drift. We experience joy more. And that's the whole nature of what I think the Course is here to do, is just like, there is no separation between any of us. You can bugger all the religions and simply say, it really is the religion of kindness towards one another, knowing that when we serve one another, we serve God. There's no rituals. There's no variety of different, idols to worship. There's no books that are going to like hold the only secret. And if you don't believe this way, you're going to burn in hell forever. There's none of that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, in my belief system, that great enlightened masters came, religions were formed around them after their death by unenlightened disciples. And as a consequence, we have these monoliths of religion now that war against each other. And I think it's a tragedy. And I also think it's the antithesis of what the enlightened masters came here to teach us. But that's kind of, my own personal opinion. I can't speak for anybody else, but this is where the Course kind of merges all of it together and says, it's only this very, very simple thing. Stop judging, stop condemning, start loving, start accepting, start seeing the light of God, or look through the eyes of the Holy Spirit at one another. And you begin to reach a certain level of enlightenment just by the love we naturally are. And if that...
I'm going to say goodbye now. Thank you very much. The Course was wonderful. That was
Gary, you did such a perfect job of encapsulating it.
I just rattle on sometimes, Janet, so you have to excuse me.
I appreciate that, though. That was
inspired.
Yeah. So
really what I needed to hear. I love what you said.
Well, that's what this group kind of stands for. These really the mastermind of it. She called me up and she said, Gary, why don't we do A Course in Miracles? You used to teach it. Why don't we do this? And I'm like, I need it. I require this recentering on a weekly basis. And so how long have we been doing this, V?
It would be probably for this format a year. We were masterminding before that on kind of random topics. And it just seemed to make more sense to focus on the Course in Miracles, because it was addressing everything that we were trying to address anyway. So,
yeah. Yeah, very true. And I'm going to get some of my students. I graduate them Thursday night. And I'm just going to give them the link and chat and say, come to this on Tuesday nights at 7:00 Central Time, and let them rock up for it, or not, But this and Jan, this kind of goes out onto YouTube, because I think, V, did you say that at one point there was up to 100 people watching our little meetings?
Yeah, there's been all sorts of weird numbers, but it's usually more than a dozen people who look at it after I've posted. Yeah, but sometimes I think one was like 300 views. I don't know why. Yeah. Yeah.
We're not after views. We're just after, ourselves in alignment.
Yeah.
But is that okay with you, Janet, that if other people in the world see our conversations?
Oh, yeah, that's how I'm going to be famous.
I'll
I like
No,
you.
no, that's great. Again, that's great. No problem.
Okay, cool. Well, V, I think we should launch.
Think so.
Let's rock and roll.
Interesting section today. The ego and false autonomy.
Aha.
Starting, yeah.
Who would like to start? I'm looking at V. V, would you
Okay.
be willing to start?
Sure.
And I'll go
Okay.
next.
All right.
And then we'll just go through.
All right. It is reasonable to ask how the mind could ever have made the ego. In fact, it is the best question you could ask. There is, however, no point in giving an answer in terms of the past because the past does not matter, and history would not exist if the same errors were not being repeated in the present. Abstract thought applies to knowledge because knowledge is completely impersonal, and examples are irrelevant to its understanding. Perception, however, is always specific and therefore quite concrete.
I
Much
found
to
that
the point.
paragraph, I found it a little confusing. Did anybody else find it confusing?
No.
Yes.
Yeah. Huh. Well, okay. Someone who didn't find it confusing, would anyone like to elaborate on this?
Who, me?
Anyone? You? Anybody?
I guess the thing that stuck out for me the most was there is, however, no point in giving an answer in terms of the past because the past does not matter. And history would not exist if the same errors were not being repeated in the present, which absolutely happens. Look at the wars that happen.
No, that's so true. I got that
racial
piece.
thing.
The thing I didn't get was abstract thought applies to knowledge because knowledge is completely impersonal. Okay, I kind of get that. Because it is, it's knowledge, kind of, global knowledge or academic knowledge. Okay, maybe that makes sense. Is that what you're getting to, Linda?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'm the really bright one today.
Maybe. You're certainly brightly, your shirt's real bright. And then it says, examples are irrelevant to its understanding. Now, that kind of throws me a bit. Perception, however, is always specific and therefore quite concrete. Now, my understanding of perception is that that's just really a transference of our ego and the idea of separation. So when it's probably going to be cleared up in the next paragraph where it says it's quite concrete. And I would think that perception is impersonal because, well, it's not impersonal, but it's certainly not consistent amongst all people. We all have our own individual perceptions. So I'm thinking, well, how can individual perception be concrete if it shifts between person to person to person to person? Is anybody else seeing what I'm seeing and scratching their head a little bit?
Yeah, but
I am.
sorry.
You go, Linda.
But when we're reading through this, Source is talking to us as individuals. So when it says perception, however, is always specific and therefore quite concrete, it is when we've actually got our own perception individually. And so I'm thinking the complete opposite of what you're thinking, Gary. You're thinking, the lot, whereas I'm just thinking of the individual because that's how I see each paragraph. It's being read to me as an individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does anyone have an in-between view? We're on the extremes here. V, what's your perspective?
Well, because of perception, the way that I've perceived perception is that it is your perception as an individual. So in a way, what Linda's saying makes sense because it's our individual perception. But then there's the higher perspective that you refer to, Gary, which is what we try to aim for when we're solving problems. And that higher perspective is, you know, the higher source, God, whatever you want to call it. So I think it'll be answered in the next paragraph, but I think perception from this is, yeah, it is talking about our individual perspective that does feel quite concrete until we
Okay.
shift, maybe. I don't know. Anyone
Well,
else?
no, I can kind of see that. Jane
I
or
wanna
Janet?
Yeah, I want to interject something because my confusion, or the thing that I found kind of quizzical, was the first sentence, in that it is reasonable to ask how the mind could ever have made the ego. Well, I think it's very plain to see how the ego has withstood the test of time, and how it was made, and this seems to almost cast doubt of how the mind could ever have made the ego. Is did it strike anyone else like that?
The first line kind of threw me a bit, because I don't understand why that's even a question. Of course, the mind made the ego because the mind
Exactly.
perceives differences, you know,
Sure.
and the mind is really oftentimes in separation because the mind is the thing that transfers and projects and judges and does all of that. Therefore, you know, I love that one line in the Course in Miracles says, for every attack, there is a like and equal fear of being attacked. And that's what always kind of what I think creates all the fear in the world, is that we're so engrossed in the judging of others and ourselves. But let's go to the next paragraph and see if it doesn't clear it up, because that's generally what happens.
Can I ask a question first, though? Is there any
Please.
way that you could make this print a little bigger, or that's impossible? I can't really read it.
Can you enlarge your screen?
Yeah,
yourself?
if I do, so what I do every week before we start is to try and make sure that I can get each, so that we're not finishing in the middle of a paragraph. So I'll try to make the next one bigger.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it was bigger last week.
Yeah,
I
Oh,
have
is
the
it?
ability on
It's
my
very
laptop
squinty this week.
Oh,
to
that's
go.
so
yeah,
good.
and then if I do that, then we can't read a whole paragraph at the end, so it's really very frustrating.
Oh,
Well, go ahead and make it bigger, V, and we'll just kind of, well, make the page width bigger. Maybe that will help.
Now we're on to, oh, we'll just have to, it's a bit disjointed trying to read the paragraph that way, but if that works. Well, maybe I'll try
Not
and get it.
could you not make the page any wider, V? Because it looks like there's lots of room for it to.
Oh, there, that's better,
All right.
V.
oh, that was good.
No, the
Sorry.
one that you just did, V,
Yeah.
make the font bigger. Sorry. I know you're doing your best. There.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Okay, let me
Let's
see.
try that.
Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? There we go.
There we
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Now we're on number 2. Okay, it's on the same page.
Oh.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and read this one. Everyone makes an ego or a self for himself, which is subject to erroneous variations because of its instability. He also makes an ego for everyone else he perceives, which is equally variable. Their interaction is a process that alters both, because they were not made by or with the unalterable. It is important to realize that this alteration can and does occur as readily when the interaction takes place in the mind as when it involves physical proximity. Thinking about another ego is as effective in changing relative perception as is physical interaction. There could be no better example that the ego is only an idea and not a fact. Well, that was just convoluted as all get out.
It had nothing to do with the previous paragraph. What's going on?
Oh, I beg to differ. I think it actually did.
I think it does. And
Let's take it line by line, shall we?
Wow.
Okay.
That's why I threw the book out when
I
years ago.
know. Okay, so everyone makes an ego or a self for himself, which is subject to erroneous variations because of its instability. So that makes sense because we all draw conclusions about life through our perceptions and our experiences, which we generally develop between birth and 7, our imprint years. And we create these core beliefs about ourselves, and then how we are, who our identity is in reaction to other people, like our parents, our siblings, our environments. And it is unstable. It has no stability because oftentimes we are making an evaluation about ourselves and who we are in the world based upon other people's interactions with us. So I see that one. Does everybody get that our ego is quite unstable?
Oh,
Yes or no?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next line. He also makes an ego for everyone else he perceives, which is equally variable. And I get that. It's like, as we see people and we judge them, we put them into boxes and define them about how we're going to interact with them and all of that. It's all in variation, because if their behavior changes, we change our opinion of them and our perception of them. So I get that. Their interaction, and I think they're saying what I made up about myself and what I make about other people, their interaction is a process that alters both, because they were not made by or with the unalterable. So my ego is creating through my perception, judging myself, judging others, which then becomes this interwoven variable between people and relationships. And so it's always rather you're interfacing with your own hallucinations about other people, which changes you and then changes your perception of other people. None of what we perceive and judge about others is created by the unalterable, which means God. It is important to realize that this alteration can and does occur as readily when the interaction takes place in the mind as when it involves physical proximity. Okay, so this is where it gets a little dodgy for me. So I'm just going to rattle it off what comes to me, and you guys pull it apart and take a stab at it. It's important to realize that this alteration can and does occur as readily when the interaction takes place in the mind. Oh, okay. So what I get from it is that realize the alteration can and does occur as readily, meaning that it becomes as real to me if I'm making it up in my mind or if I'm interacting with another person. Both of those sets of realities, we create a construct that is as real if it's physical or if it's just in our imagination. How many of you have ever gotten in arguments with people in your mind and it feels totally real? Like you're so angry at that person and she or he is not even there. And you're walking around fuming because it's real in your mind. So I'm thinking that's what it means.
And then when you see them, you don't have that conversation with them because you've already had it in your head and it's gone.
That's exactly right. Or you see
Yes.
them and you want to strangle them because you've had that conversation in your head and you're really more pissed off now. That's a possibility.
Or I already know what you're going to say, so I'm really ticked off.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So thinking about another ego is as effective in changing relative perception as is physical interaction. So we can change the perception, either positive or negative, and it's just as effective as physical interaction. There can be no better example that the ego is only an idea and not a fact. Okay, I get it now for myself. How about the rest of you? Do you guys, are you clear or not clear?
Yeah,
I'm clear.
being very clever today.
This is why we do this. If we take it apart line by line, we can generally get it. Janet, did you get that?
I get it, and it's very refreshing, actually. I have to say
Okay.
that.
Cool.
I feel so much better just with this paragraph.
Yeah. V?
When you were reading this the first time, I was remembering how I was having an issue with my partner, and it actually was nothing to do with him. It was to do with like a limiting belief that I had, and I used Gary's trauma release technique, and I did that a few times, and just all of a sudden, for no reason, during the next day, I had a complete shift in how I was thinking about him, and there was just love. And he didn't do anything. It wasn't him at all. It was all what was going on in my mind, and I shifted something. And it's also very interesting how I'm finding that people don't want coaching because they don't want to change who they are. But it doesn't change who you are. It just helps you be at peace, you know. Just doing this kind of work is.
I know. There's no way. And one of the things I'm doing, V, in the next 3 months, I'm launching an online digital course I'm going to advertise on YouTube on releasing trauma. And I'm gonna have like just a blank screen in front of me, but I'm going to be facilitating, like I'm coaching each person that comes into the training room. And I'm going to lead them through the trauma memory solution technique. And there'll be a lot of front end work and a lot of back end work, but that one piece, I want to be able to give this to the world because it is so effective and it works, and literally relationships and our sense of happiness and peace is not going to happen through meditation or through reading books or anything. It's going to happen from unloading the negative emotional states from our past. And when we do that, then the cream naturally rises to the surface and we become just who we've always been, which I think is love. Does anyone else have any other comments about this? Do we all get this, and are we all clear before we go on? Yeah? Okay.
Who wants to read number 3?
I'll read it.
Go
Your
for
own
it.
Go for it. Go for it, Janet.
Okay. Your own state of mind is a good example of how the ego was made. When you threw knowledge away, it is as if you never had it. This is so apparent that one need only recognize it to see that it does happen. If this occurs in the present, why is it surprising that it occurred in the past? Surprise is a reasonable response to the unfamiliar, though hardly to something that occurs with such persistence. But do not forget that the mind need not work that way, even though it does work that way now. Whoa.
So where
Awesome.
it says surprise is a reasonable response to the unfamiliar, is apparent. Because we're creatures of wanting to replay our past, but perhaps in different ways. Am I getting that wrong there? It's like
No,
it's almost
no,
saying like it's, you know, it's always going to be unfamiliar to us, whereas we can actually see the patterns from our past once we've started our learning. We can see that, but we just do it in a different way, and so is not unfamiliar.
I think that it's saying fundamentally we should not be surprised at the persistence of our past resurfacing, because a surprise response is only reasonable when we're facing something unfamiliar, but not something that keeps occurring over and over and over again. Because the bottom line is, these emotional states, these patterns of behavior and thought out picture themselves into our world. And if we are unresolved in the emotional states, one of the prime directives of the subconscious mind is it brings to the surface those particular emotional states and gets triggered in a variety of different environments until we address the unresolved emotions. We can't reach these places of equanimity within ourselves, our peace, our forgiveness, or acceptance of the differences outside of ourselves if we're riddled with hurt and pain and rage and fear and guilt and shame. It's impossible, because the mind projects itself out and paints everything we see in the color of our own hearts. So until we're able to change this inside, it's very difficult, in my opinion, to follow the course, because the course is fundamentally saying, stop judging and see through the eyes of the Holy Spirit. But we are looking out of a lens that is colored by our own unresolved past. And until we resolve that, it's very difficult to move forward in a way that we can live what the course teaches.
I think sisters are the greatest teachers for that lesson. And Lynn, in my life, my oldest sister and I have repeated the same thing. It's not the same circumstance, but it's the same thing. I did something that she was really, really upset. She'll never forgive me, all of that jazz. And then I came to her with an open heart and true love. But I kind of knew how she was going to take it, and clearly she did. And she repeated to me 3 times, never do this again. And she said why I shouldn't do it again. Never do this again, Janet. La, 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 la. Okay. And I kept looking at, I was on the phone with her, but I kept looking at her with being on the phone, thinking, just sending her love, sending her love. It was quite comical, really. But that's the pattern that she has, and probably has not forgiven me for 1,000 things that I've done. But I was looking at her. That's an exaggeration, but I truly love her. And now it's sort of funny, because this has gone on for probably 6 months for this particular situation. And she just called me today. Just talked about like we're on a whole other place, other path. It's just
You made up something different, Janet. She
Yeah,
just made something different about you.
And V and I have, sorry V, but we've both experienced exactly the same thing. And funnily enough, you should say that you had a phone call with your sister today, because I'm actually working away from where I normally stay, and my friend sent me a photo of a parcel that had arrived yesterday, and it's from my sister. And my sister and I, we haven't really, we've had one phone conversation, and that was to do with some paperwork that I needed to sort out in the last 12 months. So there you go.
That's so funny. They are our greatest teachers, sisters.
Yes, are they?
In a way they are, yes.
I
I've learned
agree.
a lot. Anyway.
Well, thanks for reading that, Janet. Do we have to break this down anymore, or do we kind of get it?
What do you think of that?
I think we've created examples, or Janet created an example that we could relate to.
Yeah, perfect example. Who would like to read next?
I will.
Go for it.
I'm going to try it without my glasses and my laptop quite a way away from me. Here we go.
Well, that's scary.
I know, changing patterns, that's what it is. Yes. Think of the love of animals for their offspring and the need they feel to protect them. That is because they regard them as part of themselves. No one dismisses something he considers part of himself. You react to your ego much as God does to his creations, with love, protection, and charity. Your reactions to the self you made are not surprising. Your reactions to the self you made are not surprising. In fact, they resemble in many ways how you will one day react to your real creations, which are as timeless as you are. The question is not how you respond to the ego, but what you believe you are. Belief is an ego function, and as long as your origin is open to belief, you are regarding it from an ego viewpoint. When teaching is no longer necessary, you will merely know God. Belief that there is another way of perceiving is the loftiest idea of which ego thinking is capable. That is because it contains a hint of recognition that the ego is not the self. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think the holy instant is no longer needing to learn. It's just you just merely know God.
So when you stop learning, is that when you end up going home?
I don't know that, but what I do know is that whatever this thing is that we're calling God, which I just think it's ecstatic love being made manifest throughout all creation, and if we become still enough, that is the resonance of who we truly are. And if we become still enough, we remember who we've always been, and who we always have been is that ecstatic love. And it is the idea of being separate from God that forms the ego in the first place. It's the idea that separation, then, that we need to protect ourselves, which means we're generally judging and we're doing all of those things, which just further binds us to the world. But if we become still enough, we are God incarnate, very asleep, but we're still that light incarnate. That's who we are. And that's what I think is so beautiful about the Course, is because it's super simple, very convolutedly written and spoken about, just to help people unravel their own egos and their own minds. But I think it's simple. I was sitting in meditation the other morning, and I added something to my prayer after meditation, which is, God, give me the focus to focus my mind only on you. Instead of me sitting in meditation, struggling to focus my mind, I'm just like, give me the grace to focus my mind only on you. And when I started asking for that, my meditations actually got easier. But I think before, I was sitting and I was doing my meditation, which I do for about an hour and a half every morning. And I'm being very disciplined and very focused. And I'm like disciplining my mind. I'm thinking, this is just a whole bloody lot of work. And I don't think this is correct. I don't think it should be this hard, And then when I started just asking, because if I really think about it, if I'm struggling to actually achieve this focused mind through a mantra meditation, it's really the ego, because I am like forcing my mind into obedience, right? Rather than just go, show me the grace. Let me see your face. Let me love to the level I can love to. Just show me the grace. that is something quite different than forcing my mind into compliance.
Because it'll never behave.
It will never behave. No, it just gets more ornery. It's just like I'm a bad little boy inside that if you try to put a corral around him, I just get more gnarly and nasty. But no, I think that one line, when teaching is no longer necessary, you will merely know God.
Oh, I love
I
that.
have to comment about the love of animals for their offspring.
Mm.
Yeah, on many occasions. And then there are the many occasions that they're very hideous to their offspring. They're
Yeah.
they kill them. They uh mistreat them.
Not
Yeah.
unlike humans. Not unlike humans.
Yeah. So, um, although it is very touching to know that animals like elephants, let's say, they really do mourn the loss
Oh
of
yeah.
of their people. Uh, you know, and I read something yesterday that really kind of made me giggle that the this miniature fish, this minnow, called a striped zebra or zebra minnow or
Zebrafish.
zebra stripe,
Yeah.
yeah, ha- has 75% of the same DNA that we possess.
Wow.
With
Wow.
what? And that's why the scientists in the labs use these zebra striped fish under the microscope. It's like, wow. Anyways,
Well,
so
I kind of think we're all cut from the same cloth. We
yeah,
all have two eyes and a mouth and ability to hear, and we all, we have vertebrae, and I think we're all just cut from the same cloth, and our DNA would be similar.
yeah, yeah.
But can I add this? Because I think it's relevant. I officiate weddings, and I was up in the mountains. I live in Vermont, and we're up in the mountains, and everything was set out, and we're in the middle of the celebration, the ceremony, and out of nowhere came this sound. And we didn't know. I thought it was a wild turkey, but it was very beautiful. It was like they were like singing in the joy of the love, all of that celebrated too. And then we everybody looked, we looked harder, and they said, look. And it was two alpacas next to the fence, which was next to the property that the ceremony was being held. And it was like they were the guests too. It was like we were all there in nature. We're all together celebrating.
Nice.
There was no difference.
No, no, there's not. I used to raise parrots, and I used to raise the big macaws, the big Amazonian parrots. And my pet bird was like a dog. He would lay on my chest. Well, I hand raised him from a little chick, but he would lay on my chest and lay his head like sideways on my chest and go to sleep. And if he didn't like you, like if you had bad juju when you walked into my house, he would literally climb down from his cage, put out his wings, and run as fast as he possibly could and chase people out of the house. He did that. He did that multiple times. He chased my ex-wife out of the house. He would chase people out of the house. And when he met Robert, I mean, my bird was like my people barometer. I would always know who was a great person and who was a bit dodgy. When he first met Robert, he climbed up his jeans, up his shirt and onto his shoulder, and would open his beak. And I'm like, oh my God, what's he gonna do? Open his beak, and then he would just dab his tongue on Robert's cheek. And I was like, okay, this might be someone that would be a good person to hang with. And that was 23 years ago. So my bird was an incredible bird, and they see things that humans don't see. They literally do.
Yep. Learn from that.
Yeah.
More real. I mean, no, skip the should. Wouldn't it be incredible if we could poke on each other's cheeks like that?
Yeah, I just don't think I'd want people opening up their mouths and flicking me with their tongue. But kissing me on the cheek would be okay.
Well, just to have that honesty without any kind of, I don't care how you feel about me, but this is how I feel about you kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you're not fearing rejection. It's like, oh, I'm just, you're good. So yeah.
Well, it's very interesting because I don't know why I want to tell you guys this, but just recently I went to this place called the Star Portal here in Arkansas. And who would think that Arkansas would have anything cool like that, right? But it's this little church out in kind of the boondocks, like maybe 5 miles from me, which is out in the boondocks anyways. And it's this group of people that are so awake. It was ridiculous. They do kirtan. People show up and they chant out of Sanskrit. They do flower essences and mineral essences because there's crystals and all kinds of crystal mines all over this area. And they have men's groups there. They do sacred geometry. They do all kinds of this. And I'm looking at it going, wow, like this is 5 miles from my house. And who would have ever thought I could find something like that in Arkansas of all places? There's just like coolness everywhere.
Yeah.
There's coolness everywhere.
There is.
I believe that.
Well, I think we've got time for one more paragraph. What do you guys think?
See how big it is. What do you reckon?
I reckon.
I reckon. All right. Jane hasn't read yet.
Okay. Undermining the ego's thought system must be perceived as painful, even though this is anything but true. Babies scream in rage if you take away a knife or scissors. Huh?
Go ahead.
Although they may well harm themselves if you do not. In this sense, you are still a baby. You have no sense of real self-preservation and are likely to decide that you need precisely what would hurt you most. Yet whether or not you recognize it now, you have agreed to cooperate in the effort to become both harmless and helpful, attributes that must go together. Your attitudes even toward this are necessarily conflicted, because all attitudes are ego-based. This will not last. Be patient a while and remember that the outcome is as certain as God.
Beautiful.
Well, that just puts us all in our place, doesn't it? I know for myself, if I ever drop down into worry, I love that one statement that I claimed a few meetings ago where I will say to myself, my kingdom is not of this world. And that like kind of just brings me right back to myself. Because none of this, even all my thoughts and my transferences, my projections and what ifs and need for certainty, all of that goes out the window, which is an attitude.
Mhm.
What's sticking out for me is you have no sense of real self-preservation. How much do we concern ourselves with our physical, worry about the physical, or worry about, well, not even the physical, but worry about what I was talking about before, rejection and what might happen. What's
That's
the
a
worst
big bucket.
outcome?
It's
What's the
always
worst
what
outcome? Let's sit on that.
I know. I know what might happen, what could happen, and you're already living in that emotional state as you dream up your individual horror story. You are already in that emotional state, which means you're already experiencing it. And what a global waste of our breaths. It's a global waste of our breaths.
Wow. Yes.
So it really is, this kingdom that I've created is not of the, or my kingdom, I guess, that one up there is not of this world. It's like, this is not my home. This is not who I am.
I'll oftentimes say, well, what's the worst thing in the world that could happen? I would die. That's not the worst thing at all.
Mm-mm.
Wouldn't that be beautiful to
Mm.
pass, to die? So
It's your
what
wedding
are
day.
we? Right.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good way to put it.
It is our wedding
Yeah.
day.
it is.
We get to see the beloved then.
Yes, that's right. Mm.
I can't wait.
You have to. You
I'm
have
sorry.
to.
You have to wait.
I'm waiting. I'm waiting. But boy, when it comes, I'm choosing that there'll be absolutely only glorious anticipation.
It will
Yeah.
be. I'm convinced. I know.
Well, I think we're right at the tail end. And Janet, thank you so much for coming tonight. You're such a wonderful addition to the little group, and we really appreciate your comments and your share. And so thank you for showing up.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Jane. And this is a pleasure. I truly mean that. I'm very honored to be here.
Well, you're always welcome. We do this just about every Tuesday night. And we'll do it until we don't, but I have a feeling we're going to do it for a really long time because we all get benefit from it. And so we'll just continue to rock up.
And next
Thank
week we have a time zone change, so just be aware of that. So Gary will stay at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So we just need to check our own time zones to make sure that we're on that at the same time.
Okay.
Fox.
It's the most confusing thing in the
back.
world.
I know, and they change at different times and different. It's just crazy.
I
But
know.
time doesn't matter. We get here, and then time's irrelevant until
Yeah.
we leave. I've got my statement.
Oh, I wish I did. I had one, and now it's back a few paragraphs. I didn't write it down.
Do you want me to just scroll back there then?
Would you? Yeah. I'll see if I can find it.
Well, my statement was be present and see God manifest in everything and everyone. That's what I'll be doing this week.
Oh, wait, I think I have mine. Let me write it down. So, Janet, just so you know, every one of us at the end of a course, we always have either a statement that we want to remember, or a word, or a combination of words that we want to be able to be remembered by for this coming week, or words that we want to live by for this coming week.
Okay.
So mine is, God, I had it in my head. My efforts will continue My efforts will continue toward being harmless and helpful.
Very good. Who's next?
This goes right along with the vows that we had in seminary. So I repeat, there's a variation of my vows, but today I think I'm going to say, may I remember that I am always here,
That's nice.
that you are always here. May I remember that you are always here. And
Awesome.
that has guided me, and I do a little variation of that every so many days or so, but that's really what I live by.
Awesome. I think you're muted. Oh,
No,
there
you're
you
not
are.
muted, Jane. For some reason, you have a delay when you start talking. So
Yeah.
just start
Really?
talking. Let's see if it comes up.
Okay.
Now
Am
you
I-
got you. Yes.
Oh, am I okay?
Yeah, you're good.
One of my favorite quotes from the Bible is, "Be still and know."
Mm.
That's nice.
Mm.
It is.
What was yours,
Lynn?
Gary?
Mine is, when teaching is no longer necessary, you will merely know God.
Hmm.
Does everyone
Okay.
subscribe to the notion that we teach what it is that we want to know?
Always.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Mm.
I mean, I always thought that, but just wondered.
Yeah. Cool.
That's nice, Jane.
Yeah.
What's your word, Linda? Or did you already give it?
I've already given it.
B. You're lagging.
Me? No, I was first.
Oh my God. Shows you how good my memory is.
You were so busy trying to remember yours.
That's right. I was writing things down. Okay, gang.
Working
We
too
are
hard,
we're
Gary.
calling it a wrap. God bless you all. We'll see you next week. And let's practice just not projecting anything into the future other than the inevitability that we will simply know God. And that will be the thing we will anticipate. Okay,
Amen.
God bless you all. Talk to you later.
Amen.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.